10.
Please stand, join me in the pledge. Understood.
We're already there. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm gonna call the regular meeting to order on Tuesday, September 26th at 6 p.m. Roll call.
Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Councilmember White,
Present.
Councilmember Hahn,
Present.
Council President Cox. Let the record reflect that President Cox is not present. I know, it's hard to say. Councilmember Stubble,
Yes, here.
Councilmember Josh Hahn,
I'm here.
Mayor Richardson.
Here,
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
motion by Councilman White, second by Councilman Stubble, approve the agenda as presented. Questions or changes, anybody? Okay, we'll call for the question, Councilman Larson.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, next on the agenda is communication from the floor. If you have something you'd like to talk about, please come up to the mic and state your name and where you live.
I'm Janelle Hahn. I live across the street from Monty. City Council, Mr. Mayor. At the County Commissioners meeting on August the 12th, the subject of a Fremont County world-class shooting complex was brought up by a commissioner who attended the FCAG meeting. At that meeting, the commissioners were asked to contribute $150,000 out of the half-cent sales tax funds, and that the city of Lander would contribute $15,000 towards a study that has no guarantee that Fremont County will be chosen. At the August 19th commissioner meeting, a board that is backed by FCAG again spoke to the commissioners asking for funds. The county commissioners feel that this board needs to apply for the more money funds like any other organization. At the last city council meeting, Mayor Richardson gave the council a heads up that he was going to request $15,000 out of the LIFT funds. I'm requesting that the council follow in the footsteps of the commissioners and follow protocol to applying for the funds through the application process. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. So then we'll move on. Unfinished business and an action item. Second reading of ordinance 2023-3, amending Title 12, Section 12-3-3 of the Parks and Recreations to allow regulations of all parks through adoptions of individual park rules. This is an action item, so we discussed this before.
Do you want to do the motion first and then
Right.
discussion? Great. I will move to approve second reading ordinance 2023-3.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman White, second by Councilwoman Stubble to approve second reading ordinance 2023-3. Questions? You have a question?
Mayor, no question, but thanks to Rochelle and probably Attorney Phillips, that looks like the edits we asked for were made, so thank you.
Rochelle?
Ordinance 2023-3, amending Title 12, Section 12-3-3, Parks and Recreation to allow for regulation of all parks through adopted individual city park rules. Whereas a provision for city park rules specific to each municipal park should be included in Section 12-3-3. Now therefore be it ordained by the mayor and city council of the city of Lander and council of the city of Lander in the state of Wyoming as follows. Section 1, Amendment 12-3-3, Parks and Recreation of the City of Lander Municipal Code is hereby amended as follows. Before the amendment, it read 12-3-3 Parks and Recreation, City Park Rules, Hour of Operation. All parks and recreational facilities within the city owned and maintained by the city for the public shall be closed between the hours of 11 PM and 5 AM each day, and it is unlawful any person to be in any such park or recreational facility during these hours with the following exception. A, overnight camping shall be allowed in city park at those spots which are expressly designated and marked for that purpose. Overnight campers are limited to staying no more than 3 consecutive nights. I have to enlarge my screen. Or staying longer than a period of 72 consecutive hours. There shall be no fees charged for camping at a city designated camping area. B, while city recognized organized activities are occurring, such as softball games, rodeos, etc., the park shall remain open until the organized activity has finished. C, persons using city park access road in order to access private residences located on city park access road. Number 2, persons found to be violating section 12.3.3A shall be notified by any city employee, including parks and recreation employees, to vacate the premises. In the event they fail to do so, they shall be guilty of trespassing within the meaning of the Land or City Code 7-5-1. After the amendment, the proposed ordinance would read, flip to the wrong page. 12.3.3 Parks and Recreation. A, individual city park rules. All parks and recreational facilities within the city maintained by the city for the public shall have park rules for each park location as created by resolution and approved and adopted by the governing body. Each park location shall have posted signage listing park rules pertaining to each location. Section 2, violation of this ordinance shall constitute a misdemeanor unless otherwise stated, and upon conviction shall be punishable by a maximum fine of $750 or imprisonment of not more than 6 months. Forfeitable bonds will be as set forth in the Lander Municipal Court bond schedule as adopted from time to time. Section 3, all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are hereby repealed. Section 4, severability. In any section, subsection, sentence, phrase, or clause of this ordinance or the application thereof to any person or circumstance is held invalid. Such invalidity shall not affect the other provisions or applications of this ordinance, which can be given effect without the invalid portion or application. And to this end, the provision of this ordinance is declared to be severable. Section 5, this ordinance shall take effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication as required by law and the ordinances of the city of Lander. It was passed on the first reading September 12th, 2023. It's proposed to be passed on the second reading September 26th, 2023, and the third reading will be held October 10th, 2023.
Thank you. Questions? None. We'll call for the question. Councilman Hahn? Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, moving on. Is number 5 on our agenda is executive session, potential litigation. Can I get a motion to move into executive session?
Move to executive session.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilman Dan Hahn. We'll call for the question. Councilman Larson?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Now in executive session. We'll be back in a few. Everybody in? Need a motion to come out of executive session?
I make a motion.
I'll second.
A motion by Councilman Jay Han, second by Councilwoman White. To come out of executive session. I'm gonna call for the question. Councilman Larson?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay. Moving on to new business items. Approval of representation of fee agreement with Adam Phillips for quiet title action. Can I get a motion? A second.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilman Jay Han. To approve representative's fee agreement with Adam Phillips. Discussion, all right?
Mr. Mayor, I probably ought to clarify one thing. So my representation of the city is based on a contract that I've signed to represent the city in terms of looking at contracts and doing all the civil work. Any litigation that the city would face, that would be a separate agreement because that's not covered under that contract. So this is specific to it is a very specific legal need that the city would like to pursue, and that's why there's a separate agreement. So I thought that would be helpful for clarification.
All right, I'm gonna call for a question, Councilman Jay. On,
Yes.
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 yes. Okay, moving on to item B. Approval of memorandum of understanding between Fremont County Sheriff's Office, the city of Riverton, the city of Lander, the town of DuBois, and the Shoshone Police Department for the law enforcement travel, whatever it is, assistance and activities. This is the chief's, but we'll get a motion in a second.
Move to approve.
A second,
Second.
motion by Councilman White, second by Councilman Han. Call for questions. Chief.
What this is the MOU that I've been talking to you about when it comes to the multi-jurisdictional traffic team that we got the grant for. So the first step is the MOUs, and then as soon as all the MOUs, they've been slowly being signed by other municipalities, which I believe we're going to be the last, and then DuBois tonight has theirs in front of their council. If everything goes through with it, then we're actually meeting tomorrow to line out how we're actually going to put the team out, and then we got the framework for everything else. So you'll be seeing, as soon as we get that done and the MOU signed, the public releases will go out and all the information about what it is to the public. So.
Question, Councilman Han.
I had a question, Chief. Don't we have one in place already? I thought we had one in place and the highway patrol was involved, BIA and all that, or is this something different?
No, that's actually a good question. We have the DUI task force, but we all go back to our own our own jurisdictions to do our enforcement. What this grant is this grant's actually going to allow for one car from each department to go out into areas outside of our own jurisdiction. So as a county-wide, when we see areas of high fatalities, high DUIs, this is where we'll put the team out as a whole. And instead of one jurisdiction trying to deal with it on their own with their limited resources, like a lot of the county does, this grant will actually allocate for a 5-man team, which includes the highway patrol, but they don't have to sign an MOU and they don't have to be they're not a part of the grant because they're automatically funded by the state. What this will allow is the team to actually go out in 5 cars to those areas that we deem to be high concentration areas for fatalities, DUIs, crime. And then we'll use traffic to be able to lower that and hopefully drop those numbers of fatalities that we have on the roads.
Very good. Thank you.
Questions? I'll call for the question then. Councilman Larson.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, since there's no other business brought before the council, this regular council meeting, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second,
Section.
motion by Councilman Larson, second by Councilman Stubble. To adjourn, over the question, Councilman Jehan,
Yes.
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 yes. Okay. It's adjourned. We'll move on now into city council work session meeting. First on our agenda is mayor and council updates. We'll go with council first. Councilman Han.
All right, I guess I got what we call correspondence per se. This is a letter of concern. We, Ken Rhodes and Millie Rhodes and Linda Williamson have concerns over the city of Landers procedure for variance of building codes. Our residences of 500 South Fourth and 365 Canyon have new construction of a house adjacent to us at 377 Canyon. There was a variance issue for the structure setback. We were not notified by the Board of Adjustment on 19th of May, 2022. There is a list of 53 neighborhood residents that were to be notified. We talked to many of them. Not anyone seemed to have received the notifications. Suggested that this issue be addressed for future variance requests. Citizen involvement is a part of the process. Drive by the new structure and see how it fits in the existing character of the neighborhood. Construction concerns are increased ground elevation and roof overhangs that may create possible flooding of basements and crawl spaces. And it's signed by Ken Rhodes, Millie Rhodes, and Linda Williamson. And I do have pictures. I drove past it as well. It is pretty tight, but I do have pictures of what they are talking about. What's the address on that? Very good, thank you.
I looked it up.
What was it?
377 Canyon.
So it's 6 feet from their fence. And they have 6 feet from their house to their fence, so they have a total, 12 feet in between the two houses. And it's a big house, so I mean, there's no windows that are clear from view, I would say.
Mayor, would you entertain, and this is an updates moment, would you entertain some questions, or you want us to talk about it at a different time?
Update, we'll bring it back up. All right. Okay, Councilman Stubble.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks for bringing that to our attention, Councilman Han. I have an update from the county EMS committee, which I shared last round that we were here, that I was appointed to for district, should I even know, 4? So this is a committee that's been formed by the county, each commissioner of the 5 districts. Or asked 2 people to apply, and then the commission approved those applications. And so there's 10 citizens, for lack of a better word, and then 2 county commissioners, Commissioner Allen, Commissioner Jones, and the 3 elected officials of the county, Clerk Freeze, Assessor Berg, and Treasurer Anderson are on the committee. For Lander, I represent District 4 for Commissioner Jones's district, and Tracy Rue, who's also on another board we'll talk about tonight, is on this EMS Exploratory Committee. And then Mike Barton is in District 5, but lives in Lander. So, and actually John Brown has a Lander address, so he lives outside of town. So those are your 4 sort of Lander-based representatives on the committee. We met for the first time last week, and we won't meet again until late October. So I'll bring back updates as I can. We did
brief overview of the issue at the last week's meeting, and we're given a pretty narrow charge, which I'll repeat here because I think it can look like it could be a pretty broad mandate for this committee, but it's really narrow. In fact, I'll read them out loud. The committee has two functions. We're providing feedback into sustainable funding options for EMS service in Fremont County. And we're assisting the commission in developing questions for a public survey on those possible funding mechanisms. So absolutely stay tuned for more about that because we're asked to, one, develop the survey with a reputable firm and to select the questions that are part of it. Mr. Rue, who's also on this committee. Hello. And then we will be circulating that in our networks, but also asking the city to circulate information to get a robust degree of public participation in that survey. So there's a couple things we're not doing. We're not having any insight or consultation into the operations of EMS or into the relationship between the county and the EMS provider. And we're not debating about like volunteerism or turning back into a system like that. The options the county has put in front of us for the sustainable funding that we're going to be debating and or modifying and possibly adding to this list is returning to county management, which is what happened for EMS prior to 2016, as many of you know. Leave the funding coming from the general fund from the county for the EMS service. Ask the voters to approve a sales tax, about 1% on the ballot. Ask the voters to approve an EMS district and property tax driven revenues as part of that district. Reduce the services across the county. And then ask for more cost sharing with towns and with the sovereign nations, the tribes on the Wind River. So one that will be particularly interesting, I'm sure, to the council here to hear more about if that rises to the top. So I'll bring updates back as I can and certainly excited, and we'll ask council members for your help as well as staff when we get to the survey point. And we want people to respond to the survey if you could help promote it on your channels and in your groups too. Please do. And let's see, Mayor, that's one last thing. I wanted to thank city staff that the press release that went out around the massive amount of events and visitors to town for this weekend. I was really pleased to see that. I know a couple of years ago, we felt like we didn't have that degree of community awareness, and that was difficult for some residents and some businesses. And I heard from a friend who was recently at a similar soccer event in Rock Springs that she felt the businesses down there were entirely unprepared for the influx of visitors. And so really excited to see that we are getting out ahead of that and letting people know, making plans accordingly. So thank you to Anne and to those who worked on that. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Hahn.
I would like to definitely make a comment on the ambulance. This has been, for anybody that's been watching this for a long time, I've been watching this for, I don't know, 16, 17 years, whatever. And we've had just about everybody that has managed that over that time come in here and talk to the council. And they have an accounts receivable problem. Everybody knows where it's at. And the thing is way back when it was $500,000 that they were short, and it sounds like it's maybe $1 million now. But this has been a problem forever and ever. And we've had different managers and they've tried everything. So that is, I'm not sure where it's going to go, but that's kind of a tough situation. The other thing I have is a young businessman in town cornered me this last week. And basically what he said was the city is responsible for water, sewer, streets, police, and fire. Everything else is extra, and he's not happy with a lot of the different extras, and he's really concerned about increasing everything increasing. And I won't give you this gentleman's name, but I mean, his taxes really went up, and they're concerned. I mean, I've had a lot of people really concerned about this, but he is concerned that he is going to be forced out of town just because of the way things are going. Anyway, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman White.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few things. I wanted to give a couple of shout outs. One to all the crews working on repairing the water lines and now getting things paved and really looks, one, it looks really amazing. And then also noting it's incredibly educational, I think, for, anyone seeing that, just how challenging it is to go fix the water lines. It's not dig a simple trench. And I think a lot of folks like, can't you just do that? Like, no, you're really digging up the whole bloody street, and it's extensive process and expensive process to do that. But appreciate what folks are doing there. Also want to notice, I've been seeing a lot of postings on the city webpage, or Facebook, social media, reminding folks about the opportunity for reduced rates for sewer and water. And I appreciate the extensiveness that folks are making that known and continue to educate the public for. Likewise, I want to give a shout out, not just to the events and the communication about that, but also knowing that for both One Shot and the soccer tournament that's coming up, that's also really heavily dependent on volunteers making those things happen. And that's another great example of folks doing a lot of work that benefits the city as a whole. And then, of course, all of Fremont County benefits from those kinds of large scale events, which is awesome. I'll keep noting that the senior center can always take more volunteers, whether it's for delivering Meals on Wheels or driving or helping out at their events, but they're always open for more folks there. And then earlier in the month, I went to Jackson for the Air Service Committee meetings from YDOT and YDOT Aeronautics. I had the chance to have a bunch of good conversations with, especially the folks from SkyWest. I know one of the questions folks have is, when are we going to get a second flight every day? And a big part of them, what they need in order to do that is the pilots to do that. So they're over a year into a pretty extensive pilot training program. And they knew when they did that they would train pilots and then the legacy carriers would poach them away. They're at the point now where that's slowed. So now they can keep training pilots and keep them within SkyWest. And then for first officer positions, and then the next challenge is then they need to be able to train folks to be captains. So it's a very long-term process that they're doing. They are working really hard on it, and they're trying to make that happen, but it's going to continue to take some time for that. And then lastly, I saw that Healthy Rivers Initiative just did a big cleanup on the Poposia, which is a lovely thing to have done. Again, a lot of volunteer work doing that, but that's one of our gems. And also, of course, important water quality, and appreciate the work that happened there. Thank you, Mayor. That's it.
Thank you. Councilman Larson.
Mayor, I don't have anything at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to staff reports. Chief?
I'll field any questions. I'm gonna be rambling here pretty soon by myself. I'm coming up. So if you guys have any questions, I can answer them.
Questions? None? Thanks, Chief. Regine?
Thank you, Mayor. I also don't have anything unless you have questions.
Questions?
Actually, Mayor,
Go ahead.
Regine, could you address the concerns that were raised about 377 Canyon
Bet.
and that process? Thank you.
Okay. And I've been involved in that all along the way. Millie Rhodes came down. I talked to her at her office. I showed her all of the due process documents that included the public release in the paper, the public meeting happenings, the meeting minutes, and the variance that was passed. So I don't know what happened to the mail. I don't know if that was something I did or did not do, but the due process I feel was followed. And like all variances, sometimes they're not very popular with the neighbors after the fact. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Right. Any other questions? Okay. All right, thank you. Sorry.
We received a letter from Department of Revenue this last week. They had an audit from an energy company, Merit Energy Company, and they were charging sales tax. They went back and audited from 2017 to 2020. They were charged sales tax for some electrical usage. So they won this audit to the tune that Fremont County has to reimburse the sales tax that we collected based on their usage for these utilities, and the city share is $64,484.25. They said that they could take this over multiple periods. I asked them if they could just take it out of one period, just because when you're doing your look back and you're doing your analysis of months, it's much easier to have a notation on 1 month why it's decreased than whether they take it out for 6 months. So you will notice probably we are up in sales tax like 38,000. So by the end of the year, we'll probably end at a wash because we'll be recognizing this payback for this sales tax. That is all I have.
Questions? Nope. Attorney Phillips.
I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Michelle,
I don't have anything unless there are questions for me.
questions? Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 3 unfinished business discussion concerning camping fees at City Park on Fremont Street. We had discussion on this. Regina, do you want to start off?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So we just have this on here to close the loop. The last time we had a work session, there were suggestions both ways. Please start charging camping fees. Please don't start charging camping fees. City staff recommends no charges on camping fees. However, there are some things that we can do to make that camping better. And we'd like to do that and include that in the resolution for the park rules that will be posted. So you will be seeing some suggestions in the park rules regarding camping. How long, some of those things that helps make it enforceable for the chief. So I just wanted to let you know that in a future council session, there will be no voting on adding parking fees unless you guys deem it otherwise.
Okay. Attorney Phillips, you have anything on this?
When we met last time, one question that came up was whether the city could actually charge fees or not. And I think there's a lot bigger issues than the one that I proposed, that I brought up, was whether or not we can use taxpayer money to compete with other local businesses. There are a number of statutes out there that address this. I actually did a pretty deep dive on this. Colorado Constitution actually prohibits this. Most other constitutions in the state, in other states, allude to it, but they don't come out and say it. Wyoming is one of those states that alludes to it. Primarily, what I was able to find is that there are specific instances when a government agency like a municipality or federal government or something along those lines can compete in the private sector, and that would be for hospitals, education, prisons, things like that. Doesn't necessarily talk about parks per se, because I don't know if that's high on their list. But Wyoming Statute 9-2-3220 outlines essentially that the government should not be competing with local businesses. And that talks about a website that was established in 2010 to be able to file complaints against municipalities and other government agencies when they do that. So that's about all that I could find. But like I said, I think this is somewhat minor in comparison to some of the other bigger issues that we're facing in terms of charging a fee, and that is having to hire a whole person to be able to manage camping, which would cost the city a lot of money. But anyway, that's all I have. Questions, I guess I should have.
Any questions? Councilman?
Comment. It would seem to me that free is more of a competition than
And that's a good,
charging. But that's just a.
and that's a good
just a-
point,
that's
but
just a comment.
I mean, like I said last time, because this isn't the first time we've dealt with this. I think we dealt with it 4 or 5 years ago. I did the research on it then. I pulled my notes out, and mainly the council has 2 options. Either continue on as the way it is and put more restrictions in the camping, or say no camping at all. Those are really your only 2 options, in my opinion.
Councilman Larson?
Yes, I was just curious. So we can't charge for camping, but is there anything that says there can't be donations made to the city
No,
for the use of the campground?
no, the donations can be made, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
And on a good note, since July first through today, we've collected almost $400 in donations. So I really think if we market it more and get the word out of, hey, if you want to keep this free, consider donating and do more signage, I think we're gonna see more people. I mean, people are donating 20, 10 bucks. I mean, but it's a page full.
You know, and that's the feedback that I got from several different people that that came to me and were concerned and says if there was some marketing, you know, where they knew where to make the donation and maybe a little arm twisting to go along with the marketing that it could certainly improve a lot over so I think the last that we heard that there was something like $1 a day that was donated, you know, for camping and thought, you know, big whoop, you know, but if we can step up the donations and get something out there, great, let's do it.
We wanted to be really in with how people pay now, and we were looking into Venmo. So it's been a question to be asked because we're not sure that they're considered actually a bank, you know, that Wyoming, because other municipalities, I'm talking with Green River, they want to be able to charge things. They want to use the Venmo because that so many people and young people, that's how they're paying. He's been researching it. He's trying to get an attorney general's ruling on it because they're not sure that Venmo per se is a recognized bank.
I think we need a lot better signage. I mean, I've been down there and walked around and I found one little sticker that just, I think we need to put our signage up, our rules and regulations, what we require. So I think that would be a good start,
Yeah.
my opinion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Venmo might not be the option, but I do think looking for a different platform is helpful. You know, I had an acquaintance who was paying and donating and talked about how hard owners it was. So I tried, and yeah, the minute you asked me to register a new account and a new password, I'm like, I'm out of here. So I think anything we can do where it's as easy as possible to send 10 bucks in, instead of setting up a whole other account to do so would be helpful. And I agree with Councilman Hahn. I think you're right. The free is actually the greater competition. When I looked into this, and who we were competing with having camping by fee or free, I found, 4 regional businesses that offer RV camping, and a few offered tents, but not all. So when I think about the impact on our parking lots, impact on where the big RVs are parking and how they're using the sites around them, I think that impact is something we should consider strongly in our regulation. And when we write the rules for the park in terms of where that can be allowed and maybe how many, because where we're competing, the more we allow, the more competition we're having with businesses that are charging $40 to $50 a night for those RVs. And I feel like the tent camping does have a parking lot impact, absolutely, but we're competing less with some businesses who don't even offer tent sites at those businesses. That's a point I think we can make, that zero, free camping is still a competition, but if there's fewer spaces, it's less competition. Thanks, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I did look up what free meant in terms of if we're offering something for free, if it is direct competition, and the law more or less says it's not free, it's a service that's being offered by the city. So that's essentially the difference between creating competition and providing a service to the citizens.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on. New business. A presentation from Chief Peters concerning new data tracking software. Chief, you got the next A and B discussion, so,
I'm ready.
okay.
I'm gonna hit it eventually here. Okay, let's see how we get it. How do we? Okay, so what this system is when I first came on, how I talked to you guys about how I'm big into analytics and I'm big into data. Kind of like everybody has said before, and everything is not in the data, but a lot is when it comes to law enforcement. To where in turn, you can sit here in a room and you can ask 10 people, where's our crime in Lander? And you'll probably get 8 different answers. Where what this allows us is in the old days, not in the old days, we still have it, but in the old days compared to what we have now, Spillman is our law enforcement system, so that's where if you call in, they create a ticket before they dispatch an officer. And then in turn, that system has reporting, but it doesn't have anything like this. So I used to spend hours pulling data because you'd have to pull report after report and then you'd have to merge reports. But what this system is called a ComStat system. This is what we received in the grant that I got from the Department of Justice last year, that finally we got the system in March. The mapping didn't go into play until about 3 weeks ago. So in turn, this every night at 4 o'clock in the morning, anything that's put into the system, whether it's because everything's recorded in law enforcement, whether you call in and tickets made or whether our officers make a traffic stop, everything is recorded. So there's no blind side when it comes to law enforcement. It goes into the Spillman system and then it gets downloaded into this system every day at 4 o'clock in the morning. And what this does is this gives us a quick view instead of me having to spend the report I give you guys at the end of the year. The end of the year report doesn't look like much, right? It's 2 pages. That takes me about equivalent of 15 to 20 hours to be able to pull all those different reports and all those data. And then on top of that, you end up losing sight of where stuff might be happening because when you see it just in a call ticket, you'll have to remember that in your own mind, where this system, you can literally see it at the click of a button. And I'll show you everything that it entails. So this page right here, when you look at incidents, what incidents are, this categorizes our part 1 crime, part 2 crime, and then quality of life, which for some reason our quality of life is showing 0. It's not 0 in Lander. But what it comes down to is part 1 crimes, if you remember, when I was explaining them last year, and then also the skew of Lander. Part 1 crimes are arson, aggravated assault, burglary, homicide, larceny, theft, theft of motor vehicles, rape, and robbery. So if you actually look at our numbers when it comes to part 1 crimes, it looks like we have a lot, right? Because it said 150, I believe. What was it again up here? 158. And this is comparison of years, sorry. This is 2003, this is 2002, and this is only to the year to this point. So it's not the full year. So it's comparing 2002 from January 1st to this date, and then this year from January 1st to this date. So if you look, it looks like we're right on par. Okay. So we have 158 part 1 crimes. Well, like I was explaining to the council early this year about how a couple of years ago, the state of Wyoming changed shoplifting to larceny. Well, when they changed shoplifting to larceny, it fell into part 1 crime. So if you go on Lander and you guys ever seen the crime index when it comes to different cities? So if you don't know Lander and you look on the crime index, you'll say, holy cow, because right now we're ranked number 3 in the state for violent crime, because that's what they consider part 1 crimes. But if you look at our numbers here, of that 128, which I can dissect it, of that, we probably almost the majority of that shoplifting. So that's where our numbers skewed. Like last year, our crime index was about 30 for Wyoming. So it's 30 per 100,000 citizens, which they just take we don't have 100,000, but they take it and they multiply it out. Well, if you actually look at, and we took shoplifting off last year's crime statistics, our crime rate in Lander is 3.6. So it's kind of a misnomer, but it just let you see that part. But it's the same way this year. Shoplifting and larceny is actually down, which is great. But that's a different animal in itself, but we put a few different techniques in place this year when it comes to retail theft. If somebody goes in and steals from Mr. D's, for instance, anytime they get caught, they get cited and they get trespassed. Well, if they go back to that facility and they steal again, then it's a burglary. So we're pushing the limit on it, and then that becomes a felony. And hopefully that seems to work, because the shoplifting of Mr. D's, if you ask Michelle, she'll say it's never went down, but it's going down a little bit. It's slowly ticking down. So we're trying to take a harder stance when it comes to those type of crimes, because they're skewing our numbers when it comes to the national data. But let me run through it. So offenses and natures, what natures are actual calls. So these are actual calls from citizens that have come in, that tickets have been made, or if officers have made tickets. So if you look at last year, at this point, we had 3,540. This year, we're at 3,450. So our calls are down. And it's not by coincidence. I'll get into that aspects. But so down here, it says all accidents. So last year at this point, we had 153. This year, we have 180. So our crashes are actually up 17% this year so far. But when you look at our total calls for service and incidents, we're down 2.5%. And I don't have traffic numbers on here when it comes to traffic stops, but just so you know, this is actually following the normal algorithm of law enforcement. If you're out there and you're active and you're visibly seen, and the guys are, and the officers are out there policing, even though people don't like traffic, traffic is a great resource when it comes to driving crime down. Our traffic numbers right now, we're up over 18% from last year in traffic numbers. And that translates, it would translate normally to about 5% drop, is translating to a 2.4% drop, because we're unique in Fremont County, where the aspect that we do all the VIN checks pretty much for almost Fremont County. So that drives the number. We do almost 800 VIN checks a year. So you never know. That's the fluctuation, I believe, when you actually dissect this data. There are still a few glitches, because a lot of this is related to the information going in and related to codes. So every call ticket has codes. Well, we're still figuring that out. And if the guys don't put the code in correctly, you know, it's garbage data in, garbage data out. We have to actually go through and dissect. But the neat feature on this one is, let's go to the crashes. So here's our crashes. And it actually dissects what type of crashes are that we have. So these are normal crashes that we think of, property damage crashes. So this year we have 119 compared to 93. But if you look at injury crashes, we've had 10 injury crashes this year. Non-reportables, that's anything below $1,000. And if you notice how the numbers are so low with the modern cars, you scratch the side of it, it's over $1,000 now. So, so that's a thing I've actually been working with Cheyenne to try to, you know, the way the state has written it, it's, you know, reportable crime or reportable crash is over 1,000. They need to raise that limit, because literally everything, and on top of anything over $1,000, we have to complete a state accident report, a state crash report, which is time consuming, and it sucks up about 30 to 45 minutes of the guy's time, where in turn, you know, we can have a better system in place. Hopefully one day they'll listen, but when you're dealing with the automotive side down there, it's a struggle. This is the one thing that's alarming to me, just personally, is the amount of hit and runs we have. If you look at this, you know, 119 regular crashes. So out of our number of, what was it, 153, 49 of those are hit and runs. It's almost 1/3. We're running about a 30% rate of people hitting cars and driving off. Now of that, you'll see they're hard to investigate, but we do have success at catching probably about 1/3 of those. We'd like to have that number higher, but you know, we can only go off of what we can. But when you look at the natures here, let me go back. So when we go into all natures, we can break out. So in of itself, here's our calls and every call we've had for service and how many we've had. Okay. Trying to get this out of the way. Okay, so any type of offense you want to actually tell us and it'll compare. So like 911 hangups, a lot of folks don't realize if you call 911 and you hang up, you're getting an officer. They automatically create a ticket on that one. So for instance, like that last year was 25, 15, but really in the big scale, that's not anything we really want to worry about. But like animal bites and attacks, since I have been brought that up to the council before. If you look at, we had 4 last year, 7 this year, but we also have, this goes by actual, you'll see multiples in here. So you have animal bites, but you also have the other nature could be aggressive or vicious animal too. So you have to compare that data when it comes to that. But we can actually break out by offense and also, how many. And so you could truly see when it comes to, are we trending anywhere? Then if you look at aggravated assaults, which is absolutely astonishing, our aggravated assaults, so you have an aggravated assault, no weapon, aggravated assault with weapons, we only have 4. So when you think of a population, I mean, in comparison, that's a weekend in Riverton. Literally, and not to throw them under the bus, sorry, but literally it is. So when we think of, so this actually, long story short, it's really quick to get the data. And also it's quick to dispel a lot of things when it comes to, because in law enforcement, I hear all the time where people come in and say, you know what, my neighborhood is absolutely dangerous. Well, besides me just telling them now, I actually have a tool where I could pull up and I can see everything that happened in that neighborhood, when it happened. And it's all at the touch of a finger instead of, let me get back to you in 2 weeks when I pull 19 reports and I try to figure this out myself. But you can go back here. So alcohol offenses, let's go down, see some of the issues that, you can map any one of these too. So like dead bodies, which I won't show you where dead bodies have been. But you can go into all different types. So like, go down here, overdose. We have had an uptick in overdoses so far this year, but it's not as bad as 2001 when fentanyl first came into play. This only compares 2 years. The first year I was here, in the first 4 months I was here, we had 13 ODs, where people passed away from them. So it was not very good. But you run through, when it comes to like larcenies, there's theft of services. Let's go down here. Like vehicle thefts. So vehicle thefts, it breaks out by automobile, by truck. So we've had 14 in town. If we want to see them, click on it. And then this is the cool part. Sorry, I'm a geek when it comes to this, sorry, but what it does is it actually maps. Oh, you guys aren't seeing. Do I have to share this screen?
We missed.
Okay. Maybe. So it heat maps and it lets us know. And it also, we have the setup at the police department where we can monitor it. So in case you have a night shift, a lot of time the day shift goes home, they come back the next morning. The old way would be literally they'd have to sit at a computer, which I really don't want them wasting time sitting in an office, and they'd have to read every single report. And then in their mind, they'd have to jot where it was at. Back in the early part of my career, this is what I used to do when I was in Riverton. But if you ever go to Riverton, I don't know what happened here. There's a back office that has pinholes all on the wall. That was where the old map used to be. But literally what this does, this shows us where they're occurring, and you can actually click on them, which we don't have access into. We don't have access into Spillman on this computer, but in my office, I can click this and it'll take me to Spillman and open that case report. So I can quickly see everything when it comes to it. So I gotta share back. Let's go to thefts. I just want to show you thefts, for instance. bear with me, it's a lot quicker in my office than it is here. Go to basic thefts. Okay, so what this is our thefts. Reason why I wanted to show you this is because you kind of get an idea. Every little mark on here is not necessarily a single incident. So it means it occurred at the same location. So let's go into hot areas and you can see where our congestion of thefts are. So if you look here, this should be Mr. D's. There's multiple ones when it comes to it. So you can actually see where the majority of our thefts are. So Pal's Pharmacy has only had one. Surprisingly, Safeway has only reported one this year. That tells us that something is off, not in our data, but there's something off when it comes to reporting possibly. You never know. Mr. D's has actually gotten tired. There's actually quadruple that amount, but for some reason, right now it's not showing. But you can scroll down and see our biggest theft areas are the Maverick gas station. Mr. D's is number one. I believe Safeway is just as high as Mr. D's. I think their loss prevention it just tells me that maybe they need to work on that a little bit. But it tells us when it comes to, long story short, when it comes to anything we want to deal with crime wise, it tells us the trends and it tells us where our locations are. So if we really want to crack down on theft, where do we go? We go to the ones that we know that are multiple hotspots. I won't keep sharing that because we got to close and open. But with the crashes, 64% of our crashes occur between 5th Street on Main and the Junction. So obviously, you know what, we know that's our area. If we want to drop crashes, we need to work from the Junction to 5th Street. If we want to get that down, that gives us, besides all the data and all the cool stuff out of this, this actually tells us how to allocate resources appropriately to be able to deal with stuff. And in turn, it's a new concept to some folks in law enforcement because we're not used to that. But I believe the guys have embraced it. The guys have embraced it. When I first came in and started talking about it, they thought I was speaking a foreign language. But we're doing good at it. And then the other side, there's a lot more I could show you. I don't want to spend all night in here showing it to you, but there's an officer productivity side, which is great for tracking when it comes to, because everything's about, especially from a council, if I was sitting up there, I'd be like, okay, I'm putting $2 million into this police department. What are we doing? You know, and this is everything at a touch of a button. So any question you have, I can get you an answer very quickly. So if you look at this as a police department, this is at this point in time. Okay, last year, these are total contacts, and these do not include code enforcement. We're working on that system. Jake has been working with Sean where we can't integrate it in here because to be able to integrate it in here, so what I mean by is all the tags that Sean puts on cars, all the stuff that it's not an official action that he didn't write him a ticket. If he writes him a ticket, it goes into Spillman and it will get dropped into here. If he creates a ticket related to dealing with the house, it would go into here. But Sean, like last Friday, tagged 37 cars. So you know how much of a mess it would be if we created a Spillman official ticket for 37 cars, and of that, 34 of them moved in a matter of a day. So it'd be a waste of Sean's time sitting there having to write a report for every one. So he keeps that in a separate system. Right now it's on paper, where now we're gonna get it to where Sean's system is he can record it in there and it'll actually tell him when stuff is due. Because one thing with code enforcement is he's running up that waterfall and it keeps coming down on him. And when you tag 37 cars, no matter who you are, you eventually might forget about one. And then in turn, what happens is that car he tags sits there for 2 weeks. You don't see the tag because the first thing owners do when they walk outside is it's like a parking ticket. That thing's ripped off the window, so it's not going to be sitting there advertising. And then he forgets about it. So this will help him when it comes to it. But at this point, I mean, we have 7,410 official contacts, up from 6,770 last year. So you can tell that the folks are out there working. So in comparison to 2021, I believe our total contacts were for the whole year, not this point in time, were about 6,000 period. So we're way above the curve here in the last few years. But it also breaks it out by shift for me. So you can see what's our busiest shift. Our busiest shift is days here in Lander. They've taken of that 7,400, they've taken 3,740. And then you could see where, patrol nights, 2,800, but you could see how it's been upticked in the last year. Which I'll open mine. I don't want to open all the rest of the officers, but you can actually see the percentages. So you'll see everything is increased, which that's directly related to traffic enforcement is really where the increase is coming from. It's not coming from calls. We're trying to drive down calls and keep out violent crime by being out there and being active when it comes to the traffic side of it. But if you click on one of these, you'll actually open it up and map it. So year to date, this is the administration. So that's Dwayne and myself. So you could see that so far this year, Dwayne has dealt with 2,930 or 293, sorry, not 2,000, which Dwayne deals with VIN checks up front. So that tells you how many directly. You can pin Dwayne. Any call Dwayne has is a VIN check. So he's had that many VIN checks himself so far this year. Then you have my number at 143, and then down here breaks out what they are. So crashes, I take that back. Dwayne took one crash this year. So crashes, how many you had, arrests for the year, citations issued, incidences are actual calls for service, official calls for service. And VIN checks are. Interviews are the old table. The old way we used to do that before we got the e-ticket, which if I don't talk all day, I'll show you that real quick. They used to be entered as interviews. So those are traffic warnings when you see those in the system. And then warnings are actual traffic tickets now, or traffic warnings now, since the new system's in. It goes in differently. And then it tells you the total for it. So. That's all for now. I could talk forever on this, but I just wanted to give you the idea of it. And if you want to see, there's just the tip of the iceberg or what I showed you of the capabilities. I could always stop by the office and I could show you more. Any questions on that?
Any questions?
Yes.
Some Larson.
Yes. It's working great. It's I would say it cuts down on our traffic stops, but timing wise by about 40%. So what I mean by that is back in the past of the old writing the tickets, depending on if it was new officer, you might be there for 20 minutes and we have to tell them you got to hurry up because by law you can't keep them for hours to write a ticket. Where the e-ticket now is, a seasoned officer writing a paper ticket would be about 12 to 15 minutes, the time of the stop. Right now, it's down to about 8. So it's cut it almost in half. So it's helped a ton immensely. The one thing with the e-ticket, so is a lot of places worry when they install e-ticket is they're worried that the officer is going to go crazy on the citizens because you know what? I don't have to write 4 tickets anymore. I just punch a button. And then you'll see when I show it to you, which is going to be hard because I can't put it on the screen, is literally, you'll see how quick it is. It takes about 1.5 minutes to literally scan the license, input everything. And then when it comes to citations, you can add 5 citations to 1 ticket that prints out for them. So in turn, it's just a push of a button. But where I'm getting at is actually we don't have to worry about that because since we installed e-ticket, our citations are only up 2% and our warnings are up 23%. So our guys are not out there punishing people with the new system. So I don't know if anybody will ever throw that at you, but if they do, it's not true. So.
Yeah, question?
There.
Struble?
Thank you. Chief Peters, I'm so impressed and I'm glad you're excited by that system. It's a pretty cool degree of sophistication and efficiency, I think, that you're bringing to the department. So thank you for that in general. I'm curious, does that type of, using that kind of software for tracking internally for us, is there integration with that with like the national crime reporting databases that do we report to those? And does that integrate? Is there an efficiency there because of that platform?
This system won't integrate into that, but it gives us the quick snippet of when we input the data. Because the data is inputted through the case, through the actual Spillman. But what this does is at the end of the year, we still have to audit. And this one gives us a quicker version of, okay, well, this system shows 152 park crimes. This system shows 148. It tells us, okay, we need to audit that and actually get that right and figure out which system is wrong. So,
Okay, so there's
But-
maybe a
but it
double-
doesn't quickly integrate.
Okay, which maybe is a positive. I'm hearing there's a double check there then. Between having it here and then having the other system for the national reporting. Do we report to NIBARS? Or what do we report to for national?
Yeah, they actually switched. NIBARS is the new system
Yeah.
that went in place, which actually is a lot easier to report.
Mhm.
When it comes to the UCIR was the old one.
Mhm.
I might have the acronym wrong. That was actually a mess because the way it needed to be inputted in the system, it was just time consuming and you always made a mistake. It's kind of like a state crash report. You know, Cheyenne always sends them back saying, you know, they believe your longitude and latitude's off by 0.021, you know. Where this system, now, since they went to NIBARS, we just click on it. So on our actual nature, we click on it, fill out a couple boxes and we're
Mhm.
done.
Okay.
So we don't have to literally do time consuming stuff. That was the issue with the old system, which I think you probably know is a lot of places weren't reporting.
Right.
The reason why they weren't reporting is because some of them couldn't afford to put an officer because they probably didn't have somebody to do it for them in smaller departments. And literally they would have to spend hours to get that data into there.
Okay, great. So we are reporting now to NIBARS.
Yes, that was we wouldn't have got the grant if we didn't. That
Got it.
was a part of the requirements that we were up to date on everything we needed to be up to date on.
Cool. Thanks, Chief.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so we'll move on to item B, discussion concerning mechanic series of the police department captain's job description. Chief?
What this is during the budget session, you guys approved the funding for it, but I hadn't had a job description put together. Didn't want to, put the horse before the cart. So what this is actually a job description for the captain position. And this is the time to discuss it, and then it'll go in front of the council in the next council meeting.
Discussion? Council? Okay. Okay. There's no discussion. If you have any questions or concerns, sure, if you come up with something, the chief would be glad to talk to you. Later date. Thank you. All right, moving on. Housing board update, fundraising efforts and discussion and building assets. Is that?
Yeah.
The one? Oh, there was two together.
So the,
Discussion, yeah, sorry about that.
so the mechanic series, these are existing job descriptions that when one of the current mechanics put in his notice to retire, we took a look at them and wanted to update them with some of the skills that have sort of been added to the position or are now part of the position now that we use the stacker system and things of that nature. So there's a little bit of a technical or technology skills. So those were added to just reflect the change in the way that the job is is now run with the work orders and things of that nature. Also, the CDL was required for both positions at one point, and given the change in the landscape for CDLs and things of that nature, that's now a preferred qualification or attribute rather, but is not required. And so we changed both of those and then just noted also some update to equal opportunity type language and things of that nature to bring in align with their other job descriptions. I guess the other thing to note was on the mechanic job description, not the supervisor one, that pay scale. There was a discrepancy between what it was listed on the job description and what was actually listed on our matrix. And so after taking a look at that and taking a look at what the county is advertising to pay their level 1 mechanics, we put a level 3 in there, which I think the starting pay for level 3, and I meant to bring that in, is in the 40s, 45, somewhere in that range. And I can run and get that if we want to know exactly what that level is.
Questions?
Questions? That's correct. So the items in red are actually the things that are changing or be. We'll get some. That was the date that the original job description was redone and effective in the past. And so then there will be a revised date, which in theory would probably be October of 2023, indicating the last date it was changed or updated or touched. The thought process being that if council is okay with this, it would come before you on the October 10th regular meeting for approval via resolution, and then I would start advertising for the mechanic position.
Question, what number do we generally have there in the shop besides the supervisor?
One.
Okay.
One mechanic, one supervisor.
Okay.
More questions? Okay. We'll move on to Housing Board. Regine and Tracy.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Tonight, just a quick update on Table Mountain Living Facility that is currently being proposed by the Lander Housing Authority. Tonight, we are proposing that the Housing Authority own the proposed memory care and assisted living unit managed by the Housing Authority and operated by a private-public relationship. Just real quickly, the board members, chair is Janera Hart, vice chair is vacant currently. I am the treasurer. By the way, my name is Tracy Rue, the treasurer of the Lander Housing Authority. Secretary is Corey Reynolds, member Judy Legursky, city member Regine Fossen, city liaison, non-voting Shari Laura, and new member Dean McKee. Just as a quick refresher, Erdman has been contracted for the design and construction of the 40-bed facility, 18 memory care units, 22 assisted living units with all the necessary ancillary services required. Just a real quick update as well, we received some new numbers from Westward Heights on the number of patients that they have turned away for memory care, which is about 32 patients have been turned away in the last 24 months and have had to go to other facilities across the state. In addition to healthcare services that the city council considers, this an economic development project, and that creates 20 to 30 new jobs. Total project cost is estimated at $18 million. Real quickly, where we're at on the fundraising, and I believe you have this in front of you. I won't go into great detail other than to say that this is an $18 million project. Of that, 10 million of that will need to be borrowed, with the exception of any new monies coming in from the state that is yet to be proposed during the next legislative session. The schedule, as it sits now, fall 2023 is to advertise an award for the infrastructure. Award that this fall. The winter will finalize the loan and the grant awards. Winter 2023, construct infrastructure and bid facilities, award the facility and begin building in the spring of 2024. Complete the building in the winter of 2025 and open the facility in 2026. The Housing Authority proposes that the Table Mountain facility be owned by the authority and not the city, with a long-term lease from the city of Lander. The benefits here obviously will allow more latitude. We are applying for a state land and investment board loan of $10 million at a very low interest rate, which will over 25 years, which will allow us to put the building up as collateral versus the city. I believe this also reduces the city's liability. It also will allow the Housing Authority to have more autonomy for permanent operations and management. All the meantime, the city creating healthcare jobs towards economic development. This is obviously similar to the golf course and the Old Timers Rodeo Association. So I'll pause there for any questions.
Questions?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Rue, this is probably kind of a basic question, but is this a change? It feels to me like we were heading in the opposite direction, and can you detail for us if this is as a redirection, having the Housing Authority owning it rather than the city? I mean, those are the benefits, but can you walk me through some of the evolution of that thinking?
Yeah, so we were working originally with USDA on some funding that did not go through. The community bank offered to, and still has offered to do the construction loan and a long-term financing for the gap that we have, which we would love to see about 7.5 million, but right now we're at about 10 million, given the grants and the philanthropy donations. In working on this SLIB application for the capital improvement loans at 2% versus a 6 or 7% note, it just makes it more doable versus the city borrowing that money, have the Housing Authority borrow that money. Now the caveat there is the city owns the land, right? So we would have to have a long-term lease, meaning at least a 25-year lease in order to make that work. The state would then obviously hold collateral for the revenues and the building itself. But it takes that liability off the city. It also, again, gives us the autonomy to, as the Housing Authority, to run that efficiently.
Questions, Councilman Larson?
How many other facilities similar to this are there throughout the state?
Long-term care, the closest one is Casper, Wyoming. So I'm sorry, not long-term care, memory care. The closest facility is Casper. There are no assisted livings outside of Lander other than Riverton. They're at their max capacity or close to their max capacity, and a little different level of assisted living. So,
right. And
again, I'm gonna repeat what I said earlier. So memory care is the most important portion of this, right? So we have 18 beds. Memory care, we've made arrangements for yet an additional wing to go on to that. Again, pulling data from Westward Heights, and this is from them, 32 patients have been turned away that are in need of memory care in the last 24 months.
so we're all over, we're already way over capacity. I mean,
Yes,
under capacity,
yes, we
yes.
are, right. Right, so we have a need for both, right? So we don't have true assisted living in Lander. And I can certainly describe the difference between, Westward Heights and senior living and assisted living, right? So I think we all get that, but it's just that step in the middle that we don't have currently for mom and dad and grandma and grandpa to go live somewhat autonomously with just a little bit of help, right? Memory care is completely different. That's, full service nursing, physician on duty 24/7, so on and so forth.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Councilman Hahn?
Is there an approximate operating cost per year?
There is. I do not have the performer in front of me, but it is right at about a little over $1 million. Right.
With this right here as it is, it's the startup and operating costs, they have planned 1.5 million. So maybe a year and a half worth of revenue. But I believe that once we get this thing going, any losses the city has to pay, right?
No, sir. So before the majority, the funding has been raised with the exception of the operating costs, right? Which gives us 2 years to do that. We still have to do that, right? And we have many different channels that we're working on, both, local philanthropy as well as other state and federal grants that will come to fruition. But we have put together the entire building and construction cost to date with the approval of the SLIB loan of $10 million. We already have that from the bank. It just doesn't make sense to pay 6-7% when we get 2%.
Your question though, Dan, the city has already, so we're upside down with this project right now because we fronted about $836,000. The city has, will be reimbursed with that with the loan if they go through Wyoming Community Bank and with donations. But right now, as you stand, where we stand at, we sit $836,000 negative.
Correct. And also on that 1.5 here, that also is upstart cost as well. So advertising, getting residents in the door, so to speak, which is a big process.
Councilman Larson?
Yeah, one more question. You're showing 20 to 30 employees needed to operate this facility. Seeing the employee shortage around the county, what are you comfortable? Where are you going to have to go to get employees?
That's a great question and always a concern and certainly will be a concern. Obviously, we have to have competitive wages and competitive benefits, which we do have, and we've just recently reviewed those with Westward Heights and others to make sure that we're in the ballpark with wages. I have a philosophy of a grow your own. So working over the next 2 to 3 years with the high schools and colleges about enticing high school students into the healthcare facilities through some technology, Google Glass, to where they can virtually shadow nurses, shadow physicians, shadow MAs, things like that, to try to entice them to do that. Also develop a program where we repay their student loans over the period of time. Westward Heights has a great program where I think it's up to $30,000. So you come work for Westward Heights, and as a licensed healthcare professional, meaning RN, MA, things like that, that they will pay them so much a month towards that, those student loans, right? So thinking outside the box, growing your own, getting our own kids literally interested in taking care of our own, but starting now, giving us, 2 to 3 years to get them in. So it's going to be a challenge, but it's a challenge that I'm not willing to back down from and say, we just can't do this because there's no workforce. Right. This is something that this community absolutely needs.
Go ahead.
Oh, Hopefully it's a fast one. I've been doing some thinking, Mr. Rue, recently about the variety of forms of boards that the city interacts with in terms of how we coordinate with a variety of either private entities or city-appointed boards for variety of properties and services. So my question for the Housing Authority, do you have concerns with participation of the board? And what about turnover of board members on the authority's board right now? Do you have any concerns with functionality?
No, and in fact, that's one of the reasons I came on, right? The board was lacking a little bit with the exception of Janera Hart with healthcare expertise. I've been in healthcare for 30 years, both as a clinician and an administrator. So this project is near and dear to my heart. I will be here for sure, but it's also important to note that, you know, we have to have that public-private relationship with a managed service organization like a Vetter or somebody like them that has the expertise to come in and run this where the board is just overseeing them. So any turnover in that board will really be have a negligible effect.
Okay, thanks.
Question? Covered it, okay. Anything else for Tracy? Nope. Well, Tracy, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thank you for being on our board, so.
Mayor?
Regine?
So the end result is if that is amenable to the council at your next council meeting, there will be a long-term lease proposed for your approval.
Approval. Okay. All right, county MOU for the welcoming center. That you, Rachel? Regine?
That's me. Thank you, Mayor. I had warned you a couple months ago that this would be coming. Remember, the Museum of the American West has now been usurped by the county and that transaction has happened. We had a prior arrangement with the Museum of the American West for who mowed the grounds, who watered the grounds, who cleaned the toilets at the Welcome Center, those kind of things. So we've been waiting for this agreement. This agreement has been through the museum board. It's been through Lance at the Public Works Director. Basically, you can see in there, the responsibilities for the museum are pretty much the same as they were in our previous. The one thing that's new is they're going to relocate or remove the buck rail fence on the Welcome Center parking. And that was something that Lance required so that we can get in there and do the snow removal as the city. We didn't previously do snow removal on that Welcome Center parking lot. The benefit to us for doing that is now it is a year-round welcome center where the restrooms will be open, not just seasonally, but year-round. That's really the only changes they had. They want us to buy them one piece of display equipment that they have a key to, and the rest is pretty much mimics the Museum of the American West agreement. If you guys have any changes, I would be happy to look at those. And then if not, then this agreement will be on your next council agenda for approval.
Eugene, does this still have us paying for the supplies for the restrooms?
It does. It has us paying for the supplies. Again, that's exactly what it was before. They do all of the regular repair and maintenance, but we provide the toilet paper and the hand towels. So no change from the last one.
Question? Hey. Since there is none. Anything else on our agenda today? Shall we call it a night? Okay. Go home. We don't have to vote on this work session.